Kia ora and welcome back to our council meeting of Wednesday, the 25th of August 2021. And we are back to our recommendations around the wastewater, city's wastewater BPO, which is best practicable option, the final assessment and BPO selection. And before we go to those recommendations, councillors, I understand there is another amendment around weightings. And Sarah, could I get that up on screen? We'll deal with that first, please. It's coming, I'm sure. Okay, in the short term, why that is coming up, I'll go to Councillor Dingwell, who is the mover of it, perhaps because it has a seconder with Councillor Barrett. Councillor Dingwell, if you'd want to speak to it, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess for me, the Maori values weighting change has already been modelled in our papers. So that's on page 20 of the BPO recommendations and assessments bit of the pack. And so it's already offered to us as an option if those are the values that we want to go with. So it isn't actually going against any officer advice. And during the questions, when I was asking the officers, I was told that it basically wouldn't make much difference to the overall technical recommendations. But what it does indicate is that we are taking Maori values seriously. It does show true Te Tiriti partnership if we went with 50% weighting for Maori values. It would strengthen our ability to keep our iwi partners on this journey with us. It would strengthen our position as we move through the consenting period process, knowing that iwi is with us kind of all the way along. It would strengthen our position if we transitioned through to the Three Waters central government thing, because they are likely to have 50% representation in governance. So for me, increasing the weighting of Maori values is forward thinking in an environment where there's quite a lot of uncertainty, just with all of the different changes in the way people are feeling about things. So I'm looking at it as in 35 years, in 100 years, what is this whole thing going to look like? And I feel like if we say right from the outset, we are taking Maori values seriously with 50% weighting, that would hold us in good stead later down the track. And that's why I'm putting up the recommendation to change that weighting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Can I just, councillors, if you want to speak to this amendment, put your hand into the chat box. If you're speaking on the more substantive motions, then thank you, Sarah. This has come up. Take your hand down, and we'll address that a little bit later on. Look, I'll start, and look, councillors, I'll just remind you all you represent all ratepayers. All residents, not just one sector or one party. Look, we've already taken mana whenua and Māori very, very seriously. I think we've proven that. This BPO project, and I appreciate the councillor putting it up, wasn't around the table then, but they're embedded in our process from day one. They're on the governance table. And we've done a huge amount with tangata whenua downstream, down the river, with an MCA process as well. I think we're just tinkering at the 11th hour, and I'm surprised at the seconder who's been around the council table for 3.5 years that we're going to do this at the 11th hour. I don't favour tinkering with the weightings. Look, I get that 50% is a Crown initiative around Māori and weightings, but we aren't the Crown. And I believe that there has been well and truly Māori values have been embedded right throughout this project. We have other communities as well. The environmental community, the farming community, of which ultimately will be paying a big price for this. Where are they at the table? So look, I think we've got the balance right. We've been on this journey for 3.5 years. We have experts that have done their work. I don't want to tinker at the 11th hour to be political or somewhat showing favouritism to one group. So I won't be supporting this, and I urge you to do the same. Councillor Bowen. Councillor Bowen?
Sorry. Oops. Sorry, no, I must have had my hand up from before.
All right. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The points I made for the previous amendment stand for this one as well, so I won't repeat these, but I will not be supporting this amendment. I think that the impact has been overstated by the mover of the amendment. The fact that we have had iwi and, more importantly, mana whenua at the table as a part of the steering group throughout this entire process shows a reflection of the partnership we have. I think that consulting at the 11th hour or tweaking something at the 11th hour to bring iwi views in is actually a thing of the past, and that's not how we are working. We're actually working in partnership at the beginning to co-design, co-create a range of opportunities for the city, and this is one of them. So I really don't like the idea of just, coming up with something and then consulting, or coming up with something and then slipping in Māori views through that lens. I want us to continue with the approach of co-design, of having our partners at the table at the beginning and throughout the entire process, plus giving opportunity, to give a really clear, succinct voice, which I think has happened throughout this process. So I'm not going to support the amendment, and I don't actually think it reflects the way that we engage with our local partnership with mana whenua.
Councillor Butt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I support your views and Deputy Mayor and whatever Councillor Jones said previously. To me, giving weightage to any of these heads is not, it's not only putting a number in these tables, it's the action we are drawing. To me, if you consider all the 11 options or the refined list of 11 options, the first and 11th was deleted, kind of deleted. And I think just by deleting those options, we have already given more than 50% weightage to Maori values. These two options have been mainly deleted due to the feedback we received from the iwi. Right, so we are already giving them more than 50% weightage. It's not a matter of putting a number in the table. So putting a different number, whatever have been suggested now, is a wastage of time to me. So I can't be supporter of this current suggestion. So I'm happy with whatever has been suggested, and I think we are giving them enough weightage, and we are caring for them. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. I'm happy to speak in support of this, despite the fact that it may be typecast by some as a surprise or as happening at the wrong time. We have established a process that basically gives us this time and this purpose of this meeting to actually have these sort of conversations. So I think it's, perhaps in hindsight, we could have put the council debate around weighting earlier on in the process, and that might have given some colleagues greater comfort around how we approach things. But I think that we're reasonable to have this debate here, given that that's the timing that we've established. As I said in my earlier comment, I think a lot of the other sort of tweaking around different weightings of various components don't really justify a whole lot of effort, given, as we've heard, that most of the weightings don't actually lead to a substantive change in the final outcome. So my rationale around supporting this and asking you for your support on this is really about what has changed recently and what the forward journey looks like. And that is that, you know, as we've especially journeyed through this calendar year, we've seen more and more information emerge around the Three Waters reform and how that governance and decision making will be structured going forward. And I think it would be entirely reasonable and in fact prudent for us as a council to make our decision making and weighting in a way that is consistent with that's on a 50-50 basis. So I don't see it at all as taking away from the other way that iwi are involved in this. I think that's been very valuable, having them in the steering group, and very useful using their feedback right through the process as partners. I think this just actually adds an additional signal around that commitment to partnership and puts us on the strongest footing in terms of handing this on, as we would expect to do at some point in the future, into a Three Waters entity that has a 50-50 governing arrangement. So that's my basis for supporting this and for supporting this at this time.
Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting this amendment, mostly because I feel that our commitment to partnership with Māori is integral throughout all of the other components that we're weighting anyway. It's a part of the MCA, it's part of our stakeholder and community feedback. It's included in our project objectives. It's a requirement under the RMA, and it's part of our eco strategy. So I don't see why we would isolate that one and make that 50% when it's actually right throughout every other component. I think we're doing this whole project in partnership, and I'm comfortable with where it sits.
Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just will be actually be speaking against the motion. I understand and acknowledged the movers' intention around us. But as the mayor has pointed out earlier, and also the deputy mayor and Councillor Johnson as well, is that we already have mana whenua. Mana whenua has thoroughly been involved and engaged at every stage of the process, and the fact that they are on a steering group, providing advice, cultural and strategic advice, shows that we have taken into consideration the underlying tenets of the Treaty of Waitangi, partnership, participation, and also protection. And I also would like to support what Councillor Butt mentioned earlier, and Butt support and reinforce that argument in saying that the reason why we have not considered or ruled out the ocean, full or 100% ocean discharge, or the reason why we also ruled out the 100% discharge to the river, option 1 and option 11, is simply because we have heeded the views of mana whenua. And therefore, I think, as the mayor highlighted earlier, that we shouldn't be favoring one group over another, and we're representative of a wider community. And I think we've engaged mana whenua thoroughly during this process, and therefore I will not support this motion. But I understand the intention of the mover, but I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to my comments that I made in respect to the earlier attempt at an amendment, in particular in relation to Mana Whenua, there is a substantial protection under the RMA, and unless you know, that can be met, then nothing we put up is consentable anyway. So I feel that there's more than adequate protection and you know, rights, I guess, granted through the RMA process to Mana Whenua and Tangata Whenua in general. And I don't think that it's necessary at this point to alter the weightings. I don't think it would actually have any practical effect either, because if something can't be consented, it doesn't matter what weighting we put on it, 10 or 100, it doesn't affect the outcome. And so I think, you know, those who are RMA commissioners will be very well aware of the substantial protections that exist in the RMA, and I think that they're more than adequate. So those who are not commissioners may not be aware that there's a very high level of compliance, I suppose, around matters of national significance and importance to Māori, and unless those can be met, then the whole project isn't consentable. So I don't think there's any need for this. You know, I endorse the comments that others have made about the fact that you know, our partners have been involved from the start, and changing weightings at this point is it's not actually it's a little bit superficial, I suppose, compared to the depth of the relationship that's been developed all along. So no, I won't be supporting it.
All right, councillors, there's no more comments. So back to you, Councillor Dingwell, for right of reply.
I'm happy to just go to the vote.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call for a division. So sorry, Hannah, I'll put you through that again.
No problem. I'm happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. Right, councillors, if you've all got your microphones off, I'll be calling you in random order. If you could give me whether you're for or against the motion that's on the screen, please. Councillor Butt.
Against.
Against. Mayor Smith.
Oh, against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Naylor.
Against.
Councillor Harpeta.
Against.
Councillor Bowen.
Against.
Councillor Dingwell.
For.
Councillor Beatty.
Against.
Councillor Meehan.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Councillor Dennison.
Against.
Councillor McKellard.
Against.
Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Finlay.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Rutherford.
Against.
That's 2 members for and 13 against, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I haven't received other amendments, so we'll go back to the substantive recommendations that were on the screen. Sarah, could we get those back up? Just to remind our colleagues and viewers that what we are doing. So the 3 are up there, and I've already spoken, so we'll go back to councillors that wish to speak or comment on these. So please put your please get back into the queue if you wish. Councillor Butt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, to me, these options and these reports have cleared many of the concerns that were either raised directly to me or to the group as a whole. For example, many of the people who approached me were thinking that our council will blindly go to the ocean without listening to any feedback or caring for anybody else. So we have catered for that. Many people were thinking that, oh, they are putting the pipes into the river and everything will be going into the river directly without any treatment. Although I have small concerns, for example, in the report, they are suggesting some mixing mechanism to put the thing into the river before it goes to the, wholly goes into the river. But the cost estimates are not included in this thing. But when you consider the total value of the project, it's almost I'm guessing it will be almost negligible. So it doesn't worry me a lot. I think it has been a very well researched and very well thought report. And for that, I want to congratulate many people, starting from David, the chair. I want to congratulate Melina, who's the manager, project manager, Robert. I just want to say a few words about Melina and Robert. See, I have participated in many of those sessions when we were in Foxton or Levin or even in Palmerston North. And apart from listening to the people's comments, it's my hobby to look at the faces of the people who are receiving that feedback. So many of my colleagues, they start their ears get red when they listen to these kind of feedback. But these two people, Melina and David, they were behaving like they are not listening to it. They are listening to it, but they didn't give any kind of, wrong impression to these people. They have been listening very patiently and working have been working very hard to get all of these sorted. So I'm also wanting to congratulate all the comms team and other council staff and Jim and all others at the Stantec, and especially to the mayor, because he has faced many criticism and many comments directly from the people. So mayor and all my fellow councillors who are included in the group. As a whole, I'm quite satisfied with the reports and with the options and happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. So on this, I'm really, guess my point of departure or point of starting on comment is that I think, Grant, what you as mayor outlined at the beginning of this is a fair characterization of where we're at and where we need to be going in terms of option 2 and the rationale around it now. And moving towards option 6 and 7 over time. The concern that I have, which I think was born through with the questions and answers that we had in this morning's session, was around understanding the staging and the progress towards option 6 and 7, so that there's clarity for us in that decision making as we see the final BPO recommendation coming to us next week. And so I'm, while we might be tempted to dive in and try to invent those stages and progress this afternoon by committee, willing to acknowledge that that's probably not the best or most productive process, and that a better process is to ensure that in the BPO report that we get next, we see information about that staging so that we have expert advice on what's possible and how that can run, and then we can have a debate on the basis of evidence rather than trying to invent stages here this afternoon. But very clearly, the view that I have and the urging that I have for council colleagues as well as for the project team is to give us clear information about that staging and progress towards option 6 and 7. I think we as a council need that, and certainly the broader community needs that. I think without it leaving it open-ended, just lets the imagination run wild in a way that probably doesn't help anyone that actually wants to be engaged in this process and respond to it appropriately. beyond that, yes, a few comments about the long journey that we've been on. This is one of the things that brought me into public life and into council, actually. So it goes back more than the 3 or 4 years that the project's been going, and would certainly echo Councillor Butt's acknowledgements of the hard work that the project team put in and other members of council that have been associated with this. But also to thank, really the community, because they've worked pretty hard here too. There's been a huge amount of participation and input, and recognizing the efforts that all members of the community have put in, including iwi, obviously, as our partners through this process, has been extraordinary and really valued. I did want to comment, I suppose perhaps it was my turn to be surprised, but the surprise at characterizing irrigation as destroying soil. I thought that was a little bit perhaps unfair to irrigation. There's already over 700,000 hectares of New Zealand that's under irrigation, and there's a very good reason that it's under irrigation. It's because when you irrigate, you actually increase production by 2 to 3-fold. So what that actually means is when we start talking about irrigating what is currently under dryland management, is it will actually grow more food and grow more jobs through that modification of land use. Yes, the animals that get fed will be in a different paddock, and they won't be lactating dairy cows, but there are plenty of hungry mouths to feed in the farms throughout the lower North Island that would welcome a ready and reliable source of feed. The thing that actually constrains irrigation in any case is access to a sustainable supply of water. If there's one thing that this city can guarantee over time, it is that we will be providing a sustainable supply of water. So it is eminently sensible for us to be looking at beneficial reuse of water and a transition over time to increasing that beneficial use, as well as using the adaptive management tools that are there. So, I'm very comfortable with those as the two broad solutions to this: the adaptive management suite of tools, as well as the beneficial reuse. And again, we just want to make sure that we get good clarity on that as we move to the final stage of this, so that we can understand the staging of that and the progress of that as we go from option 2 forward into option 6 and 7 over time. I think this fits really well, actually, with our broad and long-term strategy as a city, as embracing the river space and turning the city back toward the river. And I think as we do that, taking the wastewater out of the river is a natural complementary action to that. Beginning that journey through this process is really heartening and really exciting to see. So I think it fits really well with our broadest visions as a city. And we've gotten to a good starting point on that journey of taking progressively more and more water into beneficial reuse and making stronger use of the adaptive management tools that are there. So again, a big thanks to the team that's brought things through this far. It's greatly appreciated. The one request is that when we see the final recommendation report next week, that we have good clarity around the staging and progress towards option 6 and 7. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harper.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank the project team, but also the steering group team that was with the councillors that were involved in that. I know they did a lot more meetings than what we did as councillors, so thank you for all the hard work that you put on there for us. My comments are that I do support all 3 recommendations, but I do want to be, I think we really need to really make sure that we are mindful of all communities that are out there. I know we've all been lobbied a lot by lots of the different communities, but we have got a lot of communities, a lot of people knocking on our doors and are talking about the wastewater in many different ways. So I'm really, you all know that I'm from a farming background, so farming community is really worried about this, and I think that we should all be worried about it from a farming point of view. But we we are going to do a big step, do it through option 2 and then through 6 and 7. 6 and 7 really do affect the farm. All 3 affect the farming communities. So as a council, we need to basically be fully aware that it's going to really affect our backyard and those that are in farming in our backyard. So I think we're just going to be really conscious of it and really mindful of those that are in our backyard that are in farming. So really well done to those that were on the project team. Well, thank you for all that hard work. Yeah, thanks for everyone.
Okay, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm probably joining the chorus of thanks, really. This feels like a significant step in a process that's been, well, almost glacial in its progress at times. I remember, this was my first year on council when we were in court with Horizons, challenging our compliance with our consent. And it's been a process that's been with me the whole time I've been around this table. And so I really want to say thank you, as others have done, to the project team, but specifically and wholeheartedly to the councillors who've taken that lead by being on the steering group. And that has been a significant amount of time commitment and commitment to hearing the diverse voices of our community. And I suppose to reflect on Councillor Harper's comments, yes, our farming community are very engaged with this and will be impacted by whatever decision we make, but actually our whole community has been amazingly engaged by this process, much more engaged than I think I expected at the beginning. And not just around the amount of money that it's likely to cost, although that will be the primary impact that most of us feel will be in our rates bill, whoever that bill comes from, but impacted in lots of ways. And this next step of the process actually enables that voice again to come through as we move into the RMA process. This isn't the end of consulting with our community. It's simply a narrowing again of that consultation process into the RMA process itself. So yeah, on that basis, I'm feeling quite satisfied with where we are. I think in terms of my aspirations, 6 and 7 are definitely where it's at, but I can see 2 as a step towards that. And I would echo others' concerns about having a clear roadmap to achieve that, if that is the route that we all decide we're going down. So yeah, thank you for the work that's got us to this space. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I will support the recommendations, but I just want to mention one other thing that no one's brought up yet. Just acknowledge the work that Councillor Petrinas has done. He's been at all the meetings, he's been involved in this right from the start, and I just think someone should acknowledge it, because he's not here because of illness, that the work that he's done as well, and just to thank him.
Well, thank you, councillors. Is there anybody else? No, I think we've got everybody. Look, just as right a reply, and look, everyone, it has been a real process, and 3 years in the making. And look, we have consulted far and wide. This is not only affecting our city, but our neighbours around us. And actually, if you're talking the government reforms, wider afield as well. 100+ meetings, some of them, yeah, you really wanted to have a flak jacket at some of them. It was a tough conversation that we've had to have, and unfortunately for this council, we've inherited a little bit of that. But it is what it is. And I too want to acknowledge the team, led by David Warburton, who was our independent chair, and along with Milena and Robert, that did do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And along with Jim, Bradley and the team at Stantec for their technical advice and their wider team behind them. But I do think we want to, option 2, which seems to be missed on some of the comments, gives us the highest treatment. And I don't think that we can underestimate that. It will give us the best possible treatment in New Zealand. And if you can think of the full circle being reverse osmosis, i.e. drinking water, we're going back to about 80% of that. So that's quite critical to the receiving environment as well. And I do think that the receiving environment of a dual river and land at low flows is the best BPO, the best practicable option. Look, iwi there's been a lot been spoken about iwi, and it's perhaps a bit unfortunate that some haven't been as integral as the working party have, or the project steering group have. Iwi have been at the table, mana whenua, since day one, and our other river iwi have certainly been involved through assessments and many meetings. So I just want to acknowledge the team for that. This has been a big step forward for us, and it's been a very, very, very good process. Also, looking at the different stages, I do think as we move in to possible other stages, the adaptive management program I favour over just straight option 6. Option 6 actually has less treatment. It's all to land, and I don't believe it is the panacea or silver bullet that some think it is. So I'm up for different stages. Yes, let's use it as a resource. As Councillor Barrett said, there's 700,000 of land in New Zealand, 700,000 hectares of land in irrigation, but actually there's only 2,000 hectares in wastewater irrigation. So it is a big step to go and double that overnight. And I think we need to bring everybody on that journey. So look, I ask you that you support the experts' technical and our iwi's cultural advice and recommendations, and that we pass these motions, please. Now, I think somebody is asking for one of these to be separated. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be good. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Recommendation 3.
Okay. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll do recommendations 1 and 2 together. I'll do that by division. It's a big decision, so sorry, Hannah, but back to you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we will be taking recommendations 1 and 2 together. So I'm going to call your names. If you could have your microphones off, that would be fantastic. On recommendations 1 and 2, Councillor Bowen? 4. Councillor Finlay?
4.
Councillor Dingwall?
4.
Mayor Smith?
4.
Councillor Meehan?
4.
Councillor Beattie?
4.
Councillor Harpeter?
4.
Councillor Hancock?
4.
Councillor McCallard?
4.
Councillor Butt?
4.
Councillor Dennison?
4.
Councillor Barrett?
4.
Councillor Naylor?
4.
Councillor Johnson?
4.
Deputy Mayor Rutherford?
4.
It's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And if Hannah, if we could now do recommendation number 3, again by division, please.
Certainly. On recommendation 3, Councillor McCallard?
4.
Councillor Butt?
4.
Councillor Dingwall?
4.
Councillor Barrett?
4.
Deputy Mayor Rutherford?
4.
Councillor Harpeter?
4.
Councillor Johnson?
4.
Councillor Meehan?
4.
Councillor Hancock?
4.
Councillor Dennison?
4.
Councillor Naylor?
Against.
Councillor Finlay?
4.
Councillor Beattie?
4.
Councillor Bowen?
4.
Mayor Smith?
4.
With 1 vote against, Mr. Mayor, that passed.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, councillors. Very, very comprehensive debate, and I appreciate everyone's participation. We will now move to number 7 on our agenda, which is our council work schedule. And if you can go to page 25, 26, we have the work schedule coming up for, here's August. It should probably be work schedule for September. But look, I'm going to look to move that we accept the work schedule for September, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Should be September. Thank you. And are there any, sorry, I've got Heather. Heather, you would like to speak to it.
Yes, I'd just like the councillors to note that on September the 1st, we will also bring an additional paper to that meeting, which will be the Three Waters discussion.
Okay, thank you. That's reasonably important. Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think through you, I just wanted to seek a comment from the Chief Executive. Obviously, while we're under lockdown level 3 and 4, that limits our ability to do these kind of meetings. And I just wondered if there's any plan to assess the work schedules of the various committees to see what, if anything, is time sensitive in order to bring it onto a council work schedule.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we are doing that. And we will be looking at those next week's agenda. We went through an agenda meeting yesterday with the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. It is extremely full, and we will look to see what else needs to come through, because there will be another meeting, I would expect, on September the 8th, although we haven't notified that, but we will need to bring the BPO decisions back to another meeting, and it won't be next week. So there is an opportunity. So we'll be looking through those priorities and look to move those to a schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Harper.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask the Chief Executive about the parking discussion and what meeting that will be coming to.
Yeah, look, it was meant to be today, but for obvious reasons, and because of people, the same people are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, that was delayed. I'll default now maybe to the CE just to give us a range of when that will come back.
Look, I can't confirm when that will come back. It won't be next week. So we would look for that to be because of next week's schedule, which will take, I would expect, most of the day, if not all of the day. So the earliest it could come back would be the following week. So we'll look to that and get something out to you shortly. But I will do that in discussion with the Chief Planning Officer and the Chief Infrastructure Officer.
Yeah, just a further comment on that. So Vanuka Nanayakara, our Senior Transport Planner, was working on that report. He's working at the EOC, 7 days on, 7 days off. So I need to touch base to see how far through that work is and whether somebody else can pick it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Thanks, David. Appreciate this. I mean, it's urgent, but there is some, some constraints around staffing there. Now, Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to doubly check when moving the recommendations that it isn't August when you're moving it in September. We've got next week's council meeting, which will be September, but this is still August. Just clarifying.
Yeah, you might be right. Might be getting ahead of myself. Because we've had so many extraordinary meetings, it does sort of confuse or muddle things up. I think you are right in being August. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Just another question on the representation review and the consultation process for that. And I'm just wondering, in light of lockdown and the other changes and demands, whether the timing of that will still stay as outlined in the work schedule, or, I mean, do we have a deadline so that needs to happen in that way? Or I guess where I'm coming from is consultation is very difficult in these conditions. And last time we were in level 4 lockdown, we were trying to consult on a annual budget, and it was very limited engagement. And so I'm just wondering if that can be deferred, or what the thinking is around that.
Can I just get some officer advice? Because I know a lot of stuff's already happened.
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, we do intend to keep to the dates that we'd already set out, Councillor Naylor, and the reason being that we have some really tight legislative timeframes, and those haven't been lifted at this stage. Obviously, under pandemic notices, things might change, but at the moment, the intention is to continue. We've already had several submissions through even before we went into alert level 4, and they've continued to come through. So I'm monitoring that, but at this stage, intend to keep to the timeframes.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Okay, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and somewhat in the same vein, but just seeing that a component of that was hearings, and I'd just like to understand from staff what readiness we have, not only internally, what, if anything, we're able to do to assess the readiness of submitters for operating in a digital environment and still being able to participate in the process, acknowledging that some events, especially lockdowns, are out of our control.
Certainly, I can answer that, Mr. Mayor. As what we did this, Councillor Naylor alluded to it earlier, we were in lockdown when we went through our annual budget last year, and we worked with several submitters one-on-one to ensure that they were able to attend the hearing. Many of them were able to do that digitally, some did it by telephone, others did something in writing. So we have been through this process before. At this stage, of the submissions that have come in, there are only a handful of submitters who have asked to be heard. So again, we'll work with those that do wish to be heard.
Great, thanks for that assurance, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. We have the recommendation. If I just get that back up again, committee work schedule for August. Thank you, Sarah. Moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Look, I'll do this with just by voice and a show of hands. So there being no, sorry, Councillor Bowen, did you wish to speak again? Good question. Okay, no, that's fine. So what we'll do is we'll just do that by voice. So I'll ask you to vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Just about in chorus there. So that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Right. We now move to number 8, which is page 29 of your papers. It's around the planning and strategy recommendations, and I'll ask the chair of that committee from the August meeting, the Deputy Mayor, to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the Part 1 Public Planning and Strategy Committee recommendations from the 11th of August meeting be adopted.
Great, and it's seconded by Councillor Hancock.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, are there any matters arising? Being none, right, we'll do this again. We'll see if we can get in chorus. So we'll do this by voice and a show of hands. So all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Just about in chorus, thank you. So we are unanimous there. Now, one thing we have failed to do, and I apologise, is we did not move that we accept and note Christy O'Sherrell's presentation at the start of the meeting this morning. So if we could get that up, Sarah, and I'll just look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I apologise that we didn't do that right at the start.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we should note that it was on behalf of Water Protection Group, I understood.
Yeah, he didn't come to me under that banner. He came to me personally, and the paper he gave was, yeah, I just didn't get that. So look, Chris is Chris. We're noting it. It's fairly academic. Now, is Sarah, have we got that?
Yeah.
It's coming. Hannah, can you just check that it's coming? We need it on screen, please.
It is on screen, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see it.
It's there.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's fine. If you can see it, that's good. For some reason, I can't. Okay, so look, I'll look to move this again. We'll do this in unison with voice and a show of hands. So again, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, that's passed unanimously. All right. Well, thank you, councillors. Thank you. Thank you to the officers. Thank you, Hannah and Sarah, for your administration of the meeting. It's been good. I appreciate everyone's collaborative approach. So have a great rest of the day, and we will talk in the next couple of days.
We're
Kia
meeting
ora.
on Friday.
Yes, you will be.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All right.
Grant.
Thank you, everybody.